Hi everybody, this is Cindy at Upcycle Design Lab. Today I'm going to show you how I made the pattern for the wide brim denim hat that I posted a few weeks ago. And it's kind of fun. Once you have the pattern made, you can play around with it a little bit, and you can make a secondary pattern like I did with this smaller brimmed plain bucket hat. To start with, the supplies you're going to need are some old wrapping paper, a pen, a pencil, a clear grid ruler, some scissors, some scotch tape, one pipe cleaner, a tape measure. It helps if you have a clear hip ruler, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. You can kind of just draw your curves by yourself without it. And also you're going to need a 9.5 to a 10-inch circle template. I was actually able just to use a bowl from my kitchen cupboard. The first piece we're going to make is the band piece. This is the piece that has to fit your head, so it's the most important measurement that you're going to do. What I'm doing right here is I'm drawing a 1-inch grid on a piece of paper that's about 16 by 11 inches. And I'm doing this so that I can draw my first curve, which is the bottom part of the band that will fit around your head. So the first step that you need to do is to take a measurement of the circumference of your head, and then you're going to want to add 1 inch to 1.5 inches to that number, just so that you can have a little bit of ease in the hat so it doesn't fit super tight. Once you're done drawing the grid, you can number across the bottom from 0 to 15 and draw a curve similar to the one that I'm drawing here. There are a couple of still photos in a minute here to show you a little bit closer the curve that you need to draw. So you can pause the video on those pictures and draw your curve. If you have a clear hip ruler, go ahead and smooth your curve out with it once you're done drawing the curve. If not, just make this curve as smooth and even as you can. When your curve is finished, you should see a line that starts at the 1-inch line marker and ends at the end, roughly at the end of the 13-inch marker. The finished hat band is going to measure 4 inches tall. So now what I'm doing is I'm measuring along my first curve that I've drawn up 4 inches so that I can draw a second curve that parallels the first one. And once I have those marks made, I'm going back with my clear hip ruler and smoothing out the curve. Then I'm using a straight ruler to connect my two lines together. Draw a line on the 1-inch line to connect the first end, and then angle back to the line between the 11 and 12-inch markers for the top line to draw your second line to connect the top to the bottom. When you're finished, your piece should look something close to this. What we've drawn so far is half of the hat band. Now we need to measure it and make it the right size. To get the most accurate measurement on a curve, you need to stand the tape measure on its end and walk it around the curved edge. This is a little tricky, but do the best you can. Once you have this measurement, you'll determine whether you need to make the band bigger or smaller based on the measurement of your circumference of your head plus your ease divided by 2. In my case, I needed to make the band smaller by almost 2 inches. So I drew a line at the 2-inch marker, which would take off the 2 inches. This line is the center front of the band. Now we need to add the seam allowances to the other 3 sides. Most seam allowances are 5/8 inch, so what I'm doing here is I'm measuring along my curve and straight edges 5/8 inch and then smoothing them out with the straight ruler and my hip ruler. I'm also marking the piece with the center front and center back indicators. Once you've added your seam allowances, you're ready to cut the piece out. You can use the piece just like it is if you want to cut it on the fold, but since I'm trying to get my pattern pieces ready to use on men's pants, I want to go ahead and make the other half of this pattern piece. So that's what I'm doing here. Once I've completed the piece, I want to label it. So this is the finished hat band, and when you're ready to cut, you need to cut one piece. The next piece we're going to make is the top of the hat. The first step is to get an accurate measurement of the top of the hat band. To do this, walk the tape along half of the hat band from the center to the end of the seam line. Be sure to measure the seam line and not the cut line. Write this number down somewhere. For the top of the hat, start with a piece of wrapping paper that measures 11 inches by 14 inches. Fold this into quarters and draw a 1-inch grid. Place one end of the pipe cleaner at about 3.5 inches up on the one end of the grid and approximately 3 inches out on the other side of the grid. Then trace the curve line along the pipe cleaner. This will give you an approximate measurement. Use the tape measure to measure the curve and make any minor adjustments that you need to until the curve is exactly the correct quarter measurement. Then you can add your 5/8 inch seam allowance and cut out the piece. When you're finished, it should look something like this. Now we're ready to make the brim piece. Using the 10-inch circle template, make a starting mark. Here in this example, I'm using a piece of tape. Then refer back to measurement A and walk the tape around the circle, marking your finishing point to equal measurement A. For this pattern piece, you will need a piece of wrapping paper that measures 13 inches by 22. Measure up 7 inches and make a mark on the paper. Then place your template on the paper and trace your measurement A. The finished brim measures 5 inches. So starting from the curve I've just drawn, I'm measuring 5 inches around so that I can draw another parallel curve. Again, it's best if you can smooth this curve out with your hip curve ruler. You may want to double check the measurement on the inside curve to make sure that it still equals measurement A. If not, make any necessary adjustments. Now you're ready to add your 5/8 inch seam allowance. Again, you'll only be adding it to the 3 sides: the inside curve, the back edge, and the outside curve. Mark the center front and cut out the piece. If you're using a large piece of fabric for your hat, this could be used for your finished hat brim. But since I'm trying to fit mine onto garments that I can refashion into hats, I need to make my piece smaller. To do this, I fold it in half, and then just matching the top curve, fold it in a quarter again. This will give me a front piece, a back piece, and a side piece once they're cut apart. Now all I need to do is go back in and add seam allowances to the sides that I've cut apart. The last piece we need to draw is the sweatband. To do this, you'll need a piece of paper that's 28 by 8 inches, folded in half to 14 by 8. Fold your hat band piece in half and match the folds. Then trace the bottom curve and the back edge. Measure up from the bottom curve about 2 inches to draw a parallel line. Smooth out the curve and cut out your sweatband piece. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. And if you have interest in the faux oilcloth finish that I did on these hats, please visit my website at www.upcycledesignlab.com. Thanks again.